the Eagles beating the Chiefs. The Eagles beat the Chiefs 21-17. Chiefs were up 17-7 at halftime, much like in the Super Bowl when the Eagles were up 27-17 at halftime, and kind of roles reversed over here.
Both teams choked.
Both teams did indeed choke in the second half. Now, Riv, give me your take on the Eagles gutting out this win versus the Chiefs.
Well, for starters, this was probably one of the most hyped up matchups of the year. Super Bowl got two teams that just came from the Super Bowl, two teams that are performing at the highest level in their respective conferences, best records in the league. In Arrowhead, a tough place to play, we know. So this game had high implications. Coming into the game, I just felt like to start in the first half, the Eagles looked a little bit out of funk. They looked a little bit lost offensively. The Chiefs were bringing insane pressure, and I feel like the game in the first half was lost in the trenches on both sides for the Eagles. The offensive line couldn't manage. The defensive line couldn't get no pressure on Mahomes. Even if they had an attempt at him, he would just scramble out. The middle of the field was open for him to run. He was making plays. And I thought, our play calling on offense was a little funky. We ran a lot of QB draws. A lot of screens. Yeah, a lot of screens. It was weird. I guess because it was raining, so you wanted to run the ball a lot. But some of the play calling, like we did, I believe it was like a 3rd and 8 one time. We did a QB draw, and I didn't like that at all. I was like, this was nasty, and I felt like our play calling wasn't great in the first half. Come out the second half, especially we had a turnover, Hurts to whether it was AJ's fault, Jalen's fault. I feel like AJ burned him, so AJ felt like since I burned him, I'm going to keep going straight. Hurts kind of just, I feel like it was both of them. Miscommunication.
He was getting blitzed. Yeah. He was trying to get the ball out.
It was a miscommunication on both sides, but regardless, going to the second half, you're down 10 points. You even come out a little flat, but the defense in the second half, they played great down the stretch. Offensively, they were able to get it going. Swift started to get it going. Smitty started to get it going. We didn't have a big A.J. Brown game, but this team definitely pulled out in ways you have to win the ugly ones. You have to win the ugly ones. This is a high-powered offense, and sometimes there's going to be games where you can't score high-powered offense. They managed to get a fumble late in the fourth quarter, or was that early? I don't remember what time, but they managed to get a key fumble against Travis Kelce. They managed to get some big-time stops against Mahomes. And Mahomes was overthrown a little bit. They had a couple of drops, of course. You got to have a little luck in some games, but nonetheless, the Eagles, to me, they looked more prepared for adversity. They looked ready to get in any type of battle, whether it be an ugly battle, a gritty battle, a grind-out battle. They look like they can win in any form. They've shown that. This team hasn't been complete all year. It's 1 minute you're giving all the offense, next minute you're getting all the defense. This offense and this defense hasn't been able to click at the same time, but they've showed 9-1. They still going to be able to get you wins. And realistically, we should be 10-0, but who cares about that? Who cares about Jets, that Jets, that Jets loss, but definitely a great win. And, even though they did lose in the trenches, which the Eagles are known to be the best at, you got to look at this team and think this is definitely a team primed to make another run. And shout out to the Chiefs, of course. You guys played hard, but we know who the best team in the league is.
When you're talking about you guys, you're just talking to Joel or the Chiefs fans?
What do you mean?
You said you guys.
Should be talking about the Chiefs.
It was Joel and the Chiefs.
Because you looked at him, so I just want to
align him with them.
Of course. Chiefs Kingdom, right?
Mahomes Kingdom. Right?
Mahomes Kingdom. That is correct. Yeah. This game was a weird one. I actually really enjoyed watching this one because it felt like
so did I.
The Chiefs defense had a lot of answers for the Eagles offense, and that defense is an elite unit. We've seen it week to week now. They face top-end offenses, and they have held their own against top-end offenses. Looking at the Chiefs, 238 total yards. They went 3 for 11 on third down. I can understand some of the reasoning behind these Brian Johnson QB draws or screen passes. That pass rush was getting after it.
Sure.
So you have to find a way to negate the pass rush somehow. Now it's with the quick game, screen passes. I feel like the Chiefs won this game in the trenches. The defensive line did a great job. Spags dialed up a ton of blitzes and kind of threw off Jalen Hurts' timing throughout the game. But in the second half, when you face the Eagles, all they got to do is make a play. And whenever they make that one explosive play, they can get back in the game. And that was that screen pass to DeAndre Swift, which he took for, I think, 10 to 20 yards. Then the deep bomb to Devontae Smith, which led to a touchdown. All they need is a couple plays. They're always going to be in a game. This team is that elite. And dating back to the last 7 games, the Eagles are 7-0 when Jalen Hurts is down 10-plus points. So I think that speaks to their adversity and how they're overcoming adversity. With that being said, before this game, coming off the bye week, I was interested to see how the Chiefs would come off the bye week and if their offense would find some flow, because it feels like too many times something stalls out their offense, whether it's penalties, whether it's drops, whether it's a mistake by Mahomes.
Love that.
And the panic meter for this team now, if I'm doing a panic meter out of 10 and I'm giving it decibels, I think I'm going to 5. The panic meter is at 5, and the reason why, concerned. And the reason why it's only at 5 when it is halfway is because all these mistakes are fixable. They still have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. When I watch the Chiefs offense, I'm not going, wow, they're getting shut down. I'm going, man, that receiver ran the wrong route. I saw it on 2 instances in the second half. Man, Justin Watson dropped a pass on 3rd down. Man, they're having a great drive in the red zone. Travis Kelce fumbles. Mahomes threw an interception in the first half. I'm looking at all these mistakes.
First half turnovers matter, Riv. Remember that. It really can change the landscape.
It was in the red zone.
Game.
That one definitely matters.
They do. It both matter. The Travis Kelce one and Mahomes interception, both turnovers came from their best 2 players. So I'm not looking at their offense from a schematic standpoint and saying, wow, they're getting shut down. I'm seeing just drops, wrong routes, and inaccuracies. There was a couple times where Mahomes was inaccurate with the ball. Last 3 games, 0 points in the second half. That is something to be concerned about. But with all the things that went wrong for the Chiefs on a last drive, on their last offensive drive, Mahomes on 3rd and long, on 4th and long, you threw a dime to MVS, which he dropped, which could have been the game-winning touchdown. I know the Eagles could have still answered back, but that would have put him in position to take the lead and potentially win the game. Then on 4th and long, Mahomes threw it right on Justin Watson. It's a very tough catch to make. It's tough, but you couldn't ask for a better ball, and that's how that game ended right there. The Chiefs have the most drops in the NFL at 26. Second half, it was punt, fumble, punt, turnover on downs. But like I said, a lot of the times it's just miscommunication. So when you don't generate explosive plays, because the Chiefs last year, their offense went down the field in chunks, but they were able to get explosive plays. This year, they're going down the field methodically, but they're not getting any explosive plays. And if you don't generate any explosives, you can't have mistakes. You can't have a Kelce fumble. You can't have a Mahomes interception. You can't have drops. You can't have receivers running the wrong routes. I'm seeing a lot of chatter about maybe this team should have kept Tyreek Hill. And maybe they should have, but such thing in the NFL exists. It's called the salary cap. And it means you can't keep all your top-end players, so you have to remove some players somewhere. Even with Tyreek Hill not being on this team, they won the Super Bowl last year. Patrick Mahomes won MVP. I mean, they accomplished all these things. Let's not act like Tyreek Hill left. And this season right now, what we're seeing was last season. Last season, they were the number 1 ranked offense in the NFL. They went to the Super Bowl. Mahomes had a hobbled ankle. So even with Tyreek Hill's absence, they still won. Will they go back-to-back? That's still to be determined. But what I know is that this is the best defense that Mahomes has had with the Chiefs. This is an elite level unit, and all these problems on offense are fixable. The one major complaint I have is I think Brett Veach is taking Mahomes for granted. And I think when general managers have great players, they take their great players for granted and they don't surround them with more weapons. Coming into the season after losing Juju, a 900-yard receiver, you don't replace him with any veteran presence. You draft Rashee Rice, who's been good, but he's not what Juju was last year. You need somebody that can win versus man-to-man in the slot. They don't have that. I want Brett Veach to fix this receiver room much like he fixed the offensive line in 2021 when he drafted Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, when they signed Joe Thuney. This Chiefs offense, they don't need Tyreek Hill. They don't need a top-end guy. They can get a Jacoby Myers, and we'll be looking at them like a top team again. A top offense, I should say, again. Brett Veach needs to sign some quality players and not put Mahomes out there with a receiver room of MVS, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, and Justin Watson. At this point, he's doing a disservice to Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I think he's playing through injury, so he doesn't look quite as explosive, and that's hurting him, and that's hurting this offense. But this team, they're still a contender in the AFC. They're still a top team in the AFC. I mean, they had these offensive issues versus the Dolphins. They still managed to beat them because Tua threw a duck at the end of the game. I mean, you don't trust him to do nothing when it matters most. So because of that, I still trust the Chiefs. The panic meter's a bit higher, but I still trust them.
Before y'all go, I just wanted to, I saw this and I screenshot it because I did want to bring it up. From Elliot Parks, he mentioned this. Last night was the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career he was shut out in the second half at home and lost. Only the third time in 58 home games that Mahomes hasn't scored a single point in the second half. Shout out to them Eagles, man. Them fucking boys fly.
We talked about that in the fantasy reaction last night, that coming off the bye, we were expecting both teams to just show out offensively, especially the Chiefs, who had been struggling. But it's a welcome sign if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, because you've seen the offense really throughout the year, even though it's had some bumps here and there, be pretty consistent, be able to score points. Really, these last 3 weeks before the bye, they're putting up 30 points, 28 against Dallas. They've been able to score, but it's been the defense that's really been holding them back. And the fact that they held Kansas City to 17 points, to 0 points in the second half, regardless of what should have happened, what could have happened, I think that's a huge sign, because these next few weeks for Philly is gonna get tough. You got the Niners coming up, you got Dallas coming up. But to talk about Kansas City real quick, because Joel, you made a good point that these mistakes are fixable, but they also don't have the talent, I don't think, to make this just the most explosive offense that we've seen in the Patrick Mahomes era. And to the Chiefs' credit, we saw last year they didn't need the most explosive offense, but they needed a competent offense. And what we're seeing right now with a possible hobbled Travis Kelce, he rolled his ankle again last night, is that there's nobody on this offense outside of Kelce you can really trust. I mean, Pacheco was great. He's a good runner, but when you have Patrick Mahomes, it's not like you really want to rely on Pacheco game in and game out when you have such a great talent at quarterback. And while Brett Veach has done a great job, like you mentioned, rebuilding the offensive line, getting some gems defensively, Snead, Bolton, so on, you have to look at all of the draft capital and contracts he gave out to the receivers, like Sky Moore, second-round pick, looks like a bust. Kadarius Toney, trained a third-round pick. He made some great plays in the Super Bowl, but game-to-game, wildly inconsistent. MVS giving him a $33 million contract. He hasn't panned out. And then letting Juju walk. Now, Juju has had some injury history, and of course, he's not doing great in New England, but again, it's New England. They're having a terrible season. So I agree with you. Brett Veach needs to rebuild this offensive weapons group, this skill group, and it's a great draft, next season to be able to do that. But talk about Philly real quick. I have a couple gems here about my guy, Jalen Hurts, because he's just special. Jalen Hurts has 13 consecutive wins against teams with winning records, breaking a tie with your guy, Peyton Manning, and Vinny Testaverde for the most in NFL history.
Vinny Testaverde mentioned, man.
What a goat. Since the stat was first tracked in 1991, Hurts is the only quarterback with 5 straight victories when his team trails by double digits. He is currently at 7 straight wins. He is 26-2 in his last 28 starts. We could sit here and talk about how great this team is. We could talk about the competition. But you go back to, it does not matter what quarterback. You could talk about Peyton, Brady, Patrick Mahomes. 26-2 in your last 28 starts. Maybe something we never see again. This Philly team is well-rounded. They have, especially offensively, the offensive line is elite. But don't get it twisted. Jalen Hurts is the engine of this team. He is the reason they are 26-2 in the last 20. I don't want to hear about this offensive line or A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts is making this team, I wouldn't say, what they are, but he's elevating this team. And we all knew this, but I think there were some questions maybe at the beginning of the season too when he struggled, had some turnovers, but there should be no question. Right now, he's playing at a top 5 level, even though he's coming off probably one of his worst games against Kansas City. But overall, when it mattered most, he made the game-winning drive. He had that big throw to Smitty. Of course, gets the tush push, the most unstoppable play in football to win them the game. Big win going into Arrowhead, and wouldn't be surprised if we saw this matchup again in February.
Same result, by the way.
Are you guys tush push or brotherly shove?
Brotherly shove. That's what Kelce said it should be called brotherly shove, so you're right.
Whatever Kelce says, that's what it should be called.
It's because it's tush.
That's the guy.
Stand on what Kelce's saying. We stand on business.
Now, coming into this game, there were some things that we did know. We knew that the Philadelphia Eagles offense had been the main reason why they had the record that they did. We understood that this defense, specifically their secondary, was a liability and a big reason why people weren't all the way bought in on the Philadelphia Eagles. The secondary had been a question. Now, looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, we've seen their offense struggle, but we've seen this defense be one of the elite units in the National Football League. But coming into the game, we thought that Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the game, one of the best quarterbacks that we've ever seen in our lifetimes, was going to be able to, coming off a bye, be able to do whatever he wanted against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. Because again, what we knew was that this Philadelphia Eagles defense, specifically their secondary, was not good. Now, in the first half, They go first drive, punt the ball. Then they go down the field, 75 yards, score a touchdown. Justin Watson gets into the end zone, which should have been negated on a hold. But when you are the Kansas City Chiefs, you essentially get away with some stuff. But hey, that's NFL officiating. Let's not just say it's a Chiefs thing, although it seems to be a week-to-week thing. You're able to go get a kick a field goal before the half. You do score a touchdown with Travis Kelce. We see the Eagles offense, which has been money all season long, struggle the most that we've seen. You go into the second half, and like I say, week in, week out, it's a tale of two halves in the National Football League. One half, you could be the best football team that we've ever seen. In the second half, you can go and you can score 0 points for the third consecutive game in a row. When you are the Kansas City Chiefs, that's unacceptable. The 32nd ranked offense in the second half, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, 32nd. That's inexcusable. But again, there was things that we knew, but we shouldn't have expected that Patrick Mahomes can come into the second half versus the Philadelphia Eagles and put up 0. You're too primetime. You're too great. You're the best that we've ever seen. It can't be the case. But from what we've seen from this offense throughout the entirety of the year and mostly of these last 4 games, we've seen the offense really struggle in the second half. And we're starting to really appreciate what Eric Bieniemy meant to this Kansas City offense. We see what's going on over there in Washington. They're doing it with a far less talented quarterback and Sam Howell, and Sam Howell's putting up top 10 statistical numbers. He's been that great this year statistically.
Sam Howell mentioned. Bang.
But that also goes hand in hand with Eric Bieniemy, and that's the reason why I have to mention Sam Howell, because that's his quarterback over there in Washington. Now, I'm not calling Patrick Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy merchant. That'd be disrespectful to one of the greatest ever.
That'd be dumb.
But again, what we can understand is what Eric Bieniemy meant to this Kansas City Chiefs offense, and it's being highlighted every single week that the Kansas City Chiefs struggle offensively. But to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, because we don't need to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs anymore, specifically their offense, we could talk about their defense because the defense has been fun to watch. No doubt about it. You mentioned Snead, you mentioned Bolton. You can talk about how awesome Trent McDuffie is, and he makes a play on the quarterback, how awesome that he's been. Chris Jones, he was wreaking havoc on Kelce pretty much all game long, and Kelce had some great moments, but Chris Jones is one of the most dominant defensive linemen that there are in the sport right now. This Kansas City Chiefs defense is the reason that the Chiefs are as good as they are this year in 2023. But the Philadelphia Eagles, going up against the Dolphins, going up against the Chiefs, two what should be really good offenses, limited both of them to just 17 points. And to not allow the Kansas City Chiefs to score in the second half while you're on the road, that speaks volumes to the Philadelphia Eagles. And yes, Jalen Hurts did not have himself a good ball game by any means. Both these quarterbacks played very subpar football, but the quarterback on the Philadelphia Eagles made the big-time play to win the game. And that throw to Devontae Smith was right on the money, maybe slightly underthrown if I'm going to be fair, because if he throws that in stride, that's a touchdown. But it didn't matter because when you get on that 1-yard line, you can guarantee 100% they are scoring the football. The brotherly shove is unstoppable and one of the most dominant plays in sports history, not just in the NFL. But again, let's give credit to where it's due. The Philadelphia Eagles have solidified themselves as the best team in football and can do so even when their star quarterback, a top 5 quarterback playing at a top 2 level right now in the National Football League, is not at his best and clearly not at 100% because we see that he's kind of not moving the same way that we've seen Jalen Hurts move.